This additional episode about Panzers and Stukas was made possible by the free-to-play online game War Thunder, which I enjoyed a bit too much, as you can see on the screenshot. And if you want to get a shot at me, use the link in the description for a free premium vehicle, but more on this later. Now, the popular view is that the Wehrmacht use a combination of Panzers and Stukas to roll over Poland, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, France and later the Soviet Union, whereas the Panzers were heavily supported by Stukas, overwhelming the enemy ground forces. Now, the problem here is that the details on how this was actually done are rather scarce. As such, there are various assumptions and misconceptions around. At least I had plenty of myself before I took a closer look. So in this video we'll take a deeper dive on how Panzers and Stukas actually coordinated their efforts in Poland 1939, France 1940 and the Soviet Union 1941. Before the invasion of Poland in 1939, the Luftwaffe had gained some experience in the Spanish Civil War. Now, the number of Stukas used there was rather limited, as Murray notes. Interestingly, the Junker 87, the famed Stuka, flew few close air support missions in Spain. Some Stukas were sent to Spain, there were only 3 there in autumn 1938, but those that did go were sent to combat evaluation against precision targets, such as bridges, rail yards and other choke points. Another important development that happened before Poland was the basic organization to allow for the Luftwaffe and army to coordinate their units. They needed various liaison officers. Initially there were basically 2 types, the Kommandeure der Luftwaffe, meaning commanders of the Air Force, usually called Co-Luft, and Fliegerverbindungsoffiziere, in English pilot liaison officers, usually called FLIVO. The Co-Lufts were assigned to larger army units like corps and armies, and they were in charge of the airborne reconnaissance units that were assigned to the army. The Co-Luft advised the army commander on all matters about the Air Force. Yet the problem was he had no ability to directly communicate to the Luftwaffe's operational command. As such, he could not provide proper channels for requesting close air support. This is where the Fliegerverbindungsoffiziere come in. The Luftwaffe High Command recognized the need for a direct link between the major army formations and operational air units. In addition to the Co-Lufts, the Luftwaffe therefore detached its own air liaison officers, or FLIVOs, from operational squadrons and groups to be attached to supported army corps. Yet one major drawback was there was no direct relationship between the Co-Lufts and the FLIVOs. As such, they usually coordinated informally. So let's take a closer look at the Polish campaign, where in a matter of weeks the Wehrmacht destroyed the Polish army. Yet one major issue here is that due to popular media, we often forget about the realities of war. Namely that morale, suppression, supply and attrition play a far bigger role than mere firepower. As such, quite often the air units did only destroy a limited amount of enemy forces, yet successfully broke their will to fight. To give 2 examples. Interestingly, the Luftwaffe commentators were willing to admit that the material effects of such attacks were not impressive. Rather, it was the impact on the enemy morale that resulted in significant accomplishments. The Spanish war tactics of attacking in waves and keeping the enemy under constant pressure worked dramatically in Poland. General Speidel asserted the effect of the Stukas on the morale of the enemy was often decisive. One major advantage of the Stukas was their relatively high accuracy combined with firepower and speed. As such, they could be used successfully against fixed positions. Elements that had stalled previous campaigns, fortifications like the ones at Modlin outside Warsaw, for example, were now simply crushed by air attacks. Dive bombers or Stukas proved especially effective. No longer, as in previous campaigns, did armies have to pause while the heavy siege guns rolled up. Now this is the important part. The Luftwaffe helped the panzer forces break through, attack enemy formations during assembly and bomb fixed positions. Yet there were clear limits to the support the Luftwaffe could provide, namely when the front was moving and mobile warfare was in full progress. The system was best at supporting the army when it assaulted well-defined enemy defensive lines. It was not effective at supplying close air support once panzer units were in the open and moving with rapidity that caused such surprise and consternation among other European armies. One major issue during mobile warfare is that areas which were enemy territory a few days or hours earlier could be now occupied by friendly troops. As such, the air commanders were often not up to date on the situation on the ground. As a result, there were various friendly fire incidents. even despite the deployment of recognition devices by ground troops. The military historian Markus Pöllmann notes the following example for the 3rd Panzer Division. Thus, the report of the Panzerregiment 5, 3rd Panzer Division, noted laconically when asked about the experience of ground support, no experience, but only own losses due to air raids by own air force. Another one is by Murray for the 10th Panzer Division. More distressing was the fact that throughout the campaign, 10th Panzer Division's units were constantly machine gunned and bombed from the air by German aircraft. Another problem was the lack of common radio frequencies between the army and the Luftwaffe. As such, after Poland, changes to the table of organization and equipment were suggested, yet that request was not made in time to have affected the Battle of France. Now, to improve the coordination between ground forces and the Luftwaffe, in April 1940 experiments were conducted to see whether the panzer units could communicate directly with close support aircraft. Nevertheless, the problems of coordinating panzer units with Stukas by means of radio proved too intractable to solve at such short notice. Generally, a lot of organizational weaknesses were reduced by various officers cooperating at a personal level that circumvented various limitations and differences in the command structure. One major official change was the reorganization of most Stuka groups into a specialized close air support force, the 8th Air Corps. This meant that for the invasion of France there were several aspects that were clearly improved. Situation reports from the panzer divisions could be transformed into unit attack orders within minutes. The 8th Air Corps kept one Stuka group and one fighter group ready for immediate takeoff and could arrive to support armored units within 45 to 75 minutes of orders being issued. Yet since direct communication was not yet possible, in various aspects the coordination between the army and the Luftwaffe was still along rather static measures of communication. What the Luftwaffe and army had to fall back on were set clearly defined bomb lines drawn across the proposed line of operation in France and Belgium. As such, similar to Poland, the Stukas served as mobile siege guns that suppressed the French forces while the German units crossed the River Meuse. The use of mass Stuka attacks to shatter the French fort at Sedan on 14th May 1940 is well documented. Although the well-entrenched French lost few casualties to the air attacks, these air attacks on the artillery positions prevented the French from firing on the German river crossings. Yet these were known targets in fixed position. As Krefeld notes, to repeat, all this was made possible mainly by the fact that operations on the far side of the Meuse were conducted against stationary objectives and did not have to be closely coordinated with the army. Similarly, later once German reconnaissance units discovered the French counterattack, the 8th Air Corps acted and attacked troops columns and French tank deployments. Of course, we should not forget that it's very different to attack tank concentrations at assembly areas from attacking single tanks during combat. The disruption of unit cohesion and delaying movement had often a greater impact than tactical kills. Luftwaffe attacks on enemy armor resulted in only a few destroyed tanks, since direct bomb hits were rarely achieved and the Junkers 87 and Henschel 123 carried no heavy cannon. Aircraft attacks, however, separated the tanks from supporting fuel and munition vehicles, also causing heavy damage to infantry and artillery units accompanying the armored force. Similar to Poland, as long as the front lines were clear and enough time available to coordinate, the coordination between the army and Luftwaffe worked. Yet the problem was that the panzer forces weren't particularly well known for being slow. So once a panzer unit reached the bomb line, it had two options: wait until it was cleared, and thus losing momentum, or crossing it, yet then risk being bombed by friendly units. Of course, various recognition devices existed, but their effectiveness was limited. Nevertheless, the clove markers to indicate frontline positions were small and hard to see from rapidly moving aircraft. Markers for vehicles and convoy were adequate, but many formations did not mark the columns in the prescribed manner. The use of swastika flags as marking devices was less satisfactory because the red blended in with the color of the vehicles, while the white circle was too small for ready identification from higher altitudes. For Operation Barbarossa, the preparations were long enough that most lessons from Poland and France could be readily applied. One key change was that some panzer units received vehicles that could communicate directly with the aircraft. Still in command of 8th Air Corps, von Richthofen in 1941 placed experienced Stuka pilots in Mark III Panzers equipped with air-ground radios to serve as mobile forward air controllers. For the first time, Luftwaffe close air support units could coordinate ground attacks right from the front lines. Additionally, Panzer divisions also received their own recon planes and also FLIVOs, both of which were previously only available at corps level. Furthermore, the role of Nahkampfführer, close air support leader, literally close combat leader, was established. He coordinated between the Air Corps and the Panzer Corps. The result was a considerable increase in the Luftwaffe's ability to coordinate airstrikes with the army in a mobile environment. Provided the signal detachments and the FLIVOs were up front, the Luftwaffe could now talk to the lead elements of the army's advance on the ground. For the first time, there was a continuous and effective close air support in a mobile environment. As such, the air-ground coordination was not limited anymore to attack fixed known positions. This was quite important, and the Luftwaffe was often needed to fight against counterattacks or prevent Soviet forces from breaking out of encirclements. The enemy counterattacks against the German flanks led again and again to crisis situations. Here air forces played an important role to defend against these attacks. On the 24th and 25th of June, Bomber and Stuka forces of the 8th Air Corps smashed a Soviet armored grip against the 8th and 20th Army Corps in the Grodno area in rolling missions. Yet, despite these improvements in weapons, aircraft and tactics, from its high point of Russia in 1941, the Luftwaffe close air support forces declined in their effectiveness as an operational weapon. This was due to a combination of various factors. One major issue with Operation Barbarossa was the vastness of terrain, which in combination with an overall decrease of aircraft was devastating in the long run. After all, the Luftwaffe had a few hundred planes less than during the attack on France in the previous year, yet the area to cover was about 10 times the size. This created various problems, whereas previously the Luftwaffe had achieved air superiority, on the Eastern Front it usually could only achieve local air superiority for a limited amount of time. Stahel notes one striking example. The 7th Panzer Division's war diary of 22nd August 1941 reported, throughout the whole day the enemy had complete air superiority. The division has until now heavy losses through bombing attacks. On the same day, the diary of the 3rd Panzer Division noted, in the course of the afternoon there were constant and at times costly attacks on the division by high-flying bombers. Since air superiority was a requirement for the use of Stukas in a close air support role, this restricted their ability to operate without fighter escorts. Additionally, the Luftwaffe was under constant pressure. The dispersal of forces on the ground as well as the rising pressure of Soviet ground counterattacks led to a drastic increase in army requests for close air support by end of July 1941. As such, combat and operational losses combined with overstretched logistics reduced the number of aircraft substantially over time. Yet one key element in overwhelming the enemy forces previously was often achieved by sustained suppression, not destruction of enemy ground forces, as noted in the previous examples for Poland and France. One of the primary doctrinal lessons to be learned from the Luftwaffe's campaigns in Spain, Poland and France is that mass was a vital component of effective close air support. Yet this mass could not be provided anymore, and often regular level bombers had to be sent in, which were unsuited for air-ground cooperation in terms of equipment, doctrine and training. To summarize, Panzers and Stukas played a key element in the early successes of the Wehrmacht. Yet initially they couldn't be properly coordinated to be used together in mobile warfare. As such, the Stukas attacked predefined targets like fortresses or artillery positions that allowed the Panzer forces to break through. Thus the Stukas acted like flying siege artillery, or one could argue that they acted like a key, whereas the Panzer forces pushed open the door. Although Stukas were rather accurate in comparison to contemporary bombers, they couldn't provide precision attacks that killed single tanks or small targets. Yet used in groups and rolling attacks, they often suppressed the enemy forces substantially to allow ground forces to achieve their objectives. As such, the Stukas didn't act as scalpels that removed individual resistance, yet more like hammers that pounded a group of enemies into submission. Only during Operation Barbarossa in 1941 was a level of communication and coordination achieved that allowed the continuous coordination of Panzers and Stuka forces in a dynamic way. Big thank you here to War Thunder for sponsoring this additional episode. One of the features I like most about War Thunder is that it has a game mode where air forces and ground forces fight in the same battles, so you can play with Panzers and Stukas. Additionally, in total there are more than 1000 vehicle models available to play with, and recently they started to add naval forces as well. And if you want to have a shot at me or with me, be sure to use the link in the description to get a free premium vehicle. I also stream regularly on Twitch, where some of you might be able to join my squad. Now, thank you to Bismarck from Military Aviation History for helping me out here. Be sure to check out his video on the great tank busting myth. As always, source are linked in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.